Hey everyone, welcome back to Anime Dreams, your go-to destination for immersive anime fanfics and epic what-if adventures. Today, we're diving into part 2 of our exciting series, What If Naruko Encountered Her Ancestor? Disclaimer: this content is created purely for entertainment and discussion. I do not claim ownership of any anime footage featured in this video. All rights belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's jump right into it. Grab your snacks and get comfy. Let's begin. Konoha Academy, 0800 hours. Naruko arrived at her soon-to-be former classroom, her mood lighter than usual. A small, confident smile played on her lips as she headed toward her seat. Shikamaru Nara noticed her walking past and furrowed his brow in mild confusion. That's strange, he thought. Hey, Naruko. Didn't you not pass the exam? Not that I mind seeing you here, he asked, raising an eyebrow. Naruko responded casually, nope. I took a makeup test and passed. So, here I am. She offered him a calm smile. Shikamaru noted the subtle change in her demeanor. She's more composed. This could be interesting, he mused, a hint of intrigue flickering across his face. Before Naruko could take her seat, an impatient voice interrupted. Hey, Naruko. Don't ignore me. What do you think you're doing here? Kiba Inuzuka called out, his tone more confrontational than necessary. Naruko turned with an unimpressed expression. Didn't you hear what I just told Shikamaru? I'm not repeating myself. Maybe you should just head back to your seat, she said with a nonchalant wave as she turned back around. Kiba's face reddened in frustration. Don't get smart with me, he snapped, stepping toward her. Without hesitation and drawing from the grappling lessons she'd learned from Ichigo, Naruko grabbed Kiba's wrist and skillfully flipped him across the room. Before Kiba could recover, she swiftly pinned him to the wall with a firm grip, not hurting him, but making it clear she meant business. Kiba's eyes widened as he noticed something different. Naruko's eyes weren't their usual blue. They were a striking crimson. He also realized she felt stronger than he'd ever sensed before. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried a distinct presence. Don't do that again. Got it? She said in a composed yet serious tone. Kiba could only nod silently, stunned and confused. Even Akamaru whimpered slightly, staying close to his partner. Across the room, gentle lavender eyes watched with concern. Hinata Hyuga, heiress of the Hyuga clan, had admired Naruko for a long time. She had witnessed the change in Naruko's eyes but understood it stemmed from self-defense. Naruko, I wish I could tell you that I know your secret. And I don't care. No matter what others say, you're still you. Naruko made her way to her seat, right next to Sasuke Uchiha, the top student in their class. Despite the admiration he received from many in the village, Sasuke remained distant, often appearing indifferent to the praise. He had everything Naruko had once wished for, yet he seemed to take it all for granted. Sasuke glanced sideways as Naruko took the seat beside him. She had always been dismissed as the underdog, someone overlooked by most. But after witnessing her confrontation with Kiba, Sasuke's curiosity was piqued. What was that power? He thought. If she has it, then I need to learn it too. Naruko rested her head on the desk, hoping to get a few more minutes of rest when a sudden noise came from the doorway. Ugh, what now? She mumbled. Like a mini stampede, two girls burst into the classroom, racing toward the desk Naruko currently occupied. Sakura Haruno and her former friend-turned-rival, Ino Yamanaka, were both fixated on one thing, sitting next to Sasuke. To them, Naruko had always been someone to ignore or ridicule. Following the lead of some adults and classmates, they often treated her poorly, thinking little of the consequences. Teachers rarely intervened, and their behavior had gone unchecked for too long. Without warning, Sakura yanked Naruko from the seat with surprising force. Naruko hit the ground hard, her shoulder catching the impact. She winced, grabbing her arm before quickly pushing the joint back into place, something Ichigo had taught her, though he'd cautioned against doing it alone. She bit the inside of her cheek to keep from crying out, forcing herself to remain calm. Inside the seal, Saki, the guardian spirit sealed within Naruko, fumed with protective anger. How dare that girl treat my kid so harshly just to sit next to that Uchiha boy? If only I could intervene, she thought, her energy focused on gently healing Naruko's strained shoulder. The pain quickly faded, and Naruko stood, brushing herself off. She returned to her desk, only to find Sakura and Ino arguing. I'm going to sit next to Sasuke-kun, forehead girl. No, I am, Ino pig. Naruko let out a quiet sigh, not even bothering to join in the argument. Her only focus now was making it through the day, quietly and on her own terms. Naruko had just about reached her limit with the endless arguing going on around her. Her patience, already worn thin, had finally given way. Kiba had tested it earlier, but this situation was even worse. She had been quietly minding her own business when they came over, disrupted her peace, and actually pushed her out of her seat. The seat next to Sasuke, completely empty, by the way, could have been used. But no. They had to go and take hers. She clenched her fists, frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. That's it. Across the room, Hinata's expression reflected a mix of concern for Naruko and frustration with Sakura and Ino. She couldn't remember a time she had felt this upset with anyone, especially not fellow classmates. She was just about to step in and say something when Naruko stood up to address it herself. Enough. Just stop arguing already. Naruko said loudly, her voice echoing in the classroom. Sakura and Ino turned, clearly surprised. What did you just say? Sakura asked, clearly annoyed. I said, stop it. You barged in, threw me out of my seat like it was nothing, and now you're shouting like the world revolves around you. What's your problem? Outside the classroom, Ichigo sat in the tree, hidden but alert. He had been quietly observing, ensuring things didn't spiral out of control. Naruko's rising emotion, however, set off alarms in his mind, especially when he sensed the stir of Saki's chakra within her. Over the past week, he and Saki had communicated through a mental link. He had asked her what had happened after he was separated from their timeline, but she didn't remember. The incident had forced her into a dormant state, and she'd only recently reawakened. Saki's voice echoed gently through the link. Naruko, please calm down. If too much of my chakra floods your system, it could become unstable. You need to breathe and ground yourself. I'll help on my end, Ichigo said softly. Let's hope she understands. Back in the room, Naruko's frustration continued to rise. The way she was treated, as if she didn't matter, was something she'd quietly endured for far too long. Sakura's earlier comment about her not being from a clan and not deserving the same respect had cut deeply. She'd tried to ignore it, but it lingered. As Naruko took a step forward, Ichigo instantly appeared between her and the others. He gently but firmly struck a pressure point on her stomach, discharging a pulse of chakra to subdue the excess energy. Naruko's body relaxed immediately, and Ichigo caught her before she fell. He held her with care and whispered, I'm sorry. But this was necessary. As he began to carry her out, one of the Uchiha fans snickered. Ha! Guess she's in trouble now. Serves her right. Before she could finish, Ichigo reappeared behind her in a blur. Calmly, he said, if you have nothing respectful to say, it's best you say nothing at all. His presence alone quieted the room. I'm not here to punish anyone, he continued. I'm taking Naruko to the Hokage. That's all. But let me be clear, what I witnessed here was unacceptable. Sakura, Ino, you were the ones who started this conflict. If I hadn't intervened, things might have gotten out of control. Consider this a warning to handle yourselves better in the future. Ino huffed. Whatever. Sasuke would have protected us. Naruko doesn't stand a chance against him. Ichigo's gaze sharpened. You're missing the point entirely. Power without understanding means nothing. Arrogance isn't strength. His tone shifted, quieter now, but still firm. You know nothing of what Naruko has endured. The isolation, the misunderstanding, the way people treat her without even trying to know her. You don't know how heavy it is to carry all of that alone. Sasuke stepped forward. HN. Weakness. All of you. Sakura eagerly nodded. He'll be Hokage someday. Then everyone will see. Shikamaru sighed loudly. Honestly. Do you all hear yourselves? This kind of blind admiration isn't strength either. It's just exhausting. Ichigo nodded. It's this kind of thinking that has turned peaceful societies into places of conflict. Devotion without reflection can be dangerous. At that moment, Iruka entered the room, having caught the last part of the conversation. He gave a quiet nod, clearly agreeing. The room fell silent. Even the most vocal students found themselves without a response. I agree as well. Blind loyalty without question can be reckless and dangerous in this line of work. I've witnessed how harmful such devotion can become. This time, Hinata spoke up with sincerity. Admitting you're struggling isn't a sign of weakness, it's a form of courage. Naruko always carried her pain, but she never let it defeat her. I've observed her for a long time, and I know her true self. She's far stronger than I could ever hope to be. The young Hyuga's voice held deep admiration and quiet pride. She looks just like Goren. Her eyes, her face, even her voice. It's all the same. Sakura let out a huff of disagreement at the remark. Whatever. Just because you like her doesn't mean. She trailed off, cut off by the sight of Hinata's intense gaze and a glowing hand just inches from her face. Not one more word, Hinata said firmly, her voice calm but brimming with restrained emotion. I've had enough of this behavior. You so-called admirers only see the surface. You will leave Naruko alone. Do not underestimate me. I've held back out of restraint, but I won't continue to tolerate this kind of treatment. Do you understand? Sakura could only nod silently. This was a side of Hinata no one in the room had seen before, and none dared challenge her resolve. Ichigo gave Hinata a warm smile. Thank you. Naruko has endured so much. It truly meant a lot to hear someone stand up for her like that, he said appreciatively before turning to Shikamaru. You too, it's refreshing to see such wisdom in someone so young. Goren. I promise to watch over this child of your legacy. It seems she might care for Naruko. Perhaps I can help that bond grow. He silently vowed, his smile gentle and reassuring. Hinata, curious yet respectful, worked up the courage to ask a question. Who are you? I don't think I've seen you before, but you look a lot like Naruko. The question was genuine, and Ichigo felt it deserved an honest reply. Me? I'm her neighbor. Name's Ichigo Suzumiya. The resemblance? Pure coincidence. Hinata seemed content with that and bowed politely. I apologize if I was rude. I'm Hinata Hyuga. It's a pleasure to meet you, Suzumiya-san. Shikamaru offered a casual nod. Shikamaru Nara. Nice to meet you, Suzumiya-san. Iruka, sharing a small smile, introduced himself as well. Iruka Umino, their instructor. It's a pleasure, Suzumiya-san. He extended a hand, and Ichigo accepted it with a friendly shake. Ichigo chuckled lightly. No need for the formalities. Just Ichigo is fine. He gently picked up an unconscious Naruko into his arms. Iruka-san, could you let Naruko's Jounin-sensei know that I'm taking her to see the Hokage? Of course, but may I ask why? Ichigo's expression grew more serious. Let them know it's related to her condition on October 10th. Iruka immediately understood and nodded. Understood. I'll make sure the message gets through. Thank you, Iruka-san. I must be going now. With that, Ichigo vanished in a blur of motion, leaving the class momentarily speechless. Iruka cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention back. Now, for team assignments. Team 7 will consist of Naruko Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. Your Jounin sensei will be Kakashi Hatake. Sakura looked dismayed. Why do I have to be on the same team as Naruko? That's not fair. She protested. Iruka maintained a firm but fair tone. These teams are chosen by the Hokage himself. Do you believe you know better than him, Miss Haruno? Sakura quickly fell silent. Meanwhile, Sasuke, still brooding in his seat, narrowed his eyes at his new teammates. An underachiever and a distracted teammate. Don't hold me back. Sakura looked hurt by his words. But. You don't really mean that, do you, Sasuke-kun? She asked softly, reaching for his arm, her eyes glistening. Sasuke pushed Naruko aside with a cold expression, as if even being near her was unacceptable. Don't touch me. You're just holding everyone back, so stay out of my way. His voice was sharp as he lifted his hand in frustration. Shikamaru had seen enough. While he didn't always get along with Sakura, she was a fellow Leaf Village ninja, and his upbringing reminded him to step in when things went too far. Without hesitation, he activated his shadow possession jutsu, halting Sasuke's movement. Kuji quickly joined in, enlarging his hands and arms to help restrain Sasuke, preventing any further action. That's enough, Uchiha, Shikamaru said firmly, his tone calm but commanding. Ino, shocked by what she was witnessing, stepped forward with a mix of confusion and concern. What are you doing to Sasuke-kun? Kuji responded gently, his voice even. Exactly what Naruko would have done if someone acted like that toward you or anyone else. Ino was now struggling to find an explanation or excuse for why her crush had acted so unkindly. He was just, she stammered, but was interrupted by none other than Shino Aburame. Why do you continue to make excuses for him when you know what his behavior truly is like? This doesn't seem logical or reasonable, the usually reserved bug user stated clearly. Iruka had seen enough. That's enough. He said firmly, his tone unusually serious, more intense than his typical scolding manner. This signaled to the class that he was truly upset. His sharp command caused the two longtime friends to release Sasuke. Sasuke Uchiha. What you just demonstrated was a clear lack of respect for your teammates and disregard for your fellow shinobi. If it were within my authority, I would remove your headband and bar you from becoming a ninja. You will stay quiet, and I don't want to hear any more outbursts from you, he said, leaning in to drive the point home. Is that understood? Sasuke gave a quiet huff, turned away, and returned to his seat at the back of the class, clearly unhappy about being reprimanded. Iruka shook his head slightly and continued down the list. Team 8 will be Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Kiba Inuzuka. Your Jounin sensei will be Kurenai Yui. Hinata's expression fell slightly in disappointment. She had hoped to be placed on the same team as Naruko, but she knew it would be improper to complain, especially after the earlier incident. Poor Naruko. Stuck with a team that doesn't appreciate her. I just hope their sensei is kind to her. She thought. Team 10 will be Shikamaru Nara, Kuji Akimichi, and Ino Yamanaka. Your Jounin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. That concludes the team placements for this class. I wish you all the best as you begin your journey as ninja, Iruka said as he exited the classroom. Ino was unusually quiet regarding the team assignments. On one hand, she still harbored feelings for Sasuke, but after what had nearly happened earlier, she was beginning to question her feelings. She also remembered what Kuji had told her, that Naruko would have done the same thing as Shikamaru and come to her aid, even though she was often treated unfairly. It gave her a lot to reflect on. One by one, the other instructors arrived to collect their teams. However, Team 7 sensei had yet to appear. Sakura remained at a distance from Sasuke for the time being, caught up in her own conflicted thoughts. This is all Naruko's fault. She fumed inwardly. But then, a voice inside her, her inner self, quiet for a long time since she developed a crush on Sasuke, suddenly pushed back. Don't you dare blame Naruko. You've always known what Sasuke is like, but you were too blind to see it. Naruko was always kind to you and everyone else. Until people treated her so poorly. That was more upsetting than all the time you wasted chasing someone who doesn't care. Oh yeah? Then why did she act like that? She had no reason to, Sakura began, but was immediately interrupted. No more excuses. You started it? You yanked her from her seat and hurt her shoulder. Then you said something incredibly hurtful, just to wound her even more. That was unfair, even for you, inner Sakura snapped. She was the voice of reason Sakura had tried to suppress, but enough was enough. Sakura knew deep down that her negative opinions of Naruko hadn't come from her own family, but from whispers, rumors, and poor influences. The admiration she had for Sasuke had clouded her judgment. The truth about the blonde girl with whisker marks had only made inner Sakura more upset. Naruko wasn't some troublemaker, she was someone who had been isolated and mistreated, yet still tried to reach out to others with kindness. Her heart ached for her, but the persona Sakura had built, the one who fawned over Sasuke and ignored everything else, kept her from acting on it. Sakura was momentarily stunned by her inner self's outburst, but her usual habits crept back in. So what? She's still just annoying and clueless. It's no wonder nobody wanted to adopt her. Inner Sakura was stunned at the cruelty of those words. How could you say that? She whispered. But she quickly recovered. That's completely unacceptable. Naruko has always treated you better than you deserved. From now on, you will treat her with the respect she's earned, as a teammate and as a person. And if you don't, I will make sure you understand why you must. I promise you that. Then, with one final glare, she faded into the back of Sakura's mind. You? Teach me a lesson? Yeah, right. Sakura thought defiantly. She wasn't ready to listen to that voice just yet. Change doesn't come easily, especially not overnight. Her thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the sound of the classroom door opening and closing. She turned to look. A tall, laid-back-looking Jounin stood in the doorway. Are you Team 7? He asked in a relaxed tone. Sakura gave a nod. Wait a moment. Aren't you missing someone? Where is Naruko Uzumaki? He asked, sounding a little puzzled. Sakura glanced at Sasuke, but when she saw that he wasn't going to respond, she decided to speak up herself. Kakashi-sensei? A Jounin came by earlier and said he was taking Naruko to see the Hokage. Do you know who that was? He seemed polite, but there was something a bit intense about him. And he looked a lot like Naruko, she added, her voice trailing off in thought. He also told me to mention something about a condition and the date October 10th. Do you know what that could mean? Kakashi's visible eye widened slightly at the mention, but he composed himself quickly. We'll go ahead with introductions now, and Naruko can do hers tomorrow, he told them calmly. As the two Jonin shared their introductions, Kakashi silently reflected, predictable. At least I got the Uchiha I expected. Be at training ground number 7 tomorrow at 0700 for your test, he instructed. Also, it might be best not to eat breakfast beforehand. You'll understand why soon. With that, he vanished in a flicker, off to speak with the Hokage regarding Naruko. Sakura turned toward Sasuke, who was already heading home. Hey, Sasuke-kun? Would it be all right if I walked with you? She asked hopefully, her cheeks tinged pink. His response was cold. No. Just leave me alone, he muttered, giving her a brief glare before continuing on his way. Sakura felt her hope fall apart. The person she admired most was treating her harshly, just as she had once treated her teammate, Naruko. Suddenly, her surroundings shifted, and she found herself deep within her own thoughts. Standing before her was her inner self. Well? How does it feel, now that you're experiencing what Naruko has gone through for so long? Inner Sakura asked pointedly. Why? Why is this happening to me? This is all Naruko's fault. If she hadn't gotten in the way, Sasuke wouldn't be upset with me. Sakura cried out, frustrated. Really? You're still blaming her? Naruko wasn't even here today. That other jounin, Ichigo Suzumiya, took her to the Hokage. Something seemed off. He didn't act like any regular shinobi. It felt serious, inner Sakura muttered thoughtfully. I don't care. Sasuke-kun is everything to me. I'll never forgive Naruko for interfering. Sakura insisted stubbornly. Inner Sakura sighed deeply. You're so determined to ignore the truth. Fine. You'll just have to keep learning the hard way. Maybe someday it'll finally make sense. With that, inner Sakura faded back into her subconscious. Sakura blinked, clearing her head, then quietly made her way home, lost in thought. Haruno Residence, 4:40 p.m. Sakura stepped wearily into the entryway of her home, calling out as she kicked off her shoes. I'm home. Her parents, Takeo and Sanae, ran a modest but successful import/export business within the village, trading goods with various regions and communities. Sanae was a kind-hearted and practical woman with a gift for handling finances, managing both the family's budget and the company's accounts. Takeo, on the other hand, was a sharp and intuitive businessman, always quick to spot an opportunity and negotiate a good deal. On the night of the Kyubi incident, they had just returned to the village as things began to settle. When they learned that the creature had been sealed into a newborn baby and that the fourth Hokage's final wish was for the child to be treated with kindness, they immediately felt moved. They understood the late Hokage must have seen something special in the child, Naruko. They wished to honor that wish and even attempted to adopt her, as did a few other compassionate families and clans. Unfortunately, the village council denied those requests. All they could do was quietly support her from afar as she grew up mostly on her own. Sanae, with her nurturing heart, often felt sorrow when she thought of Naruko's childhood. They occasionally worked with her through small jobs, offering food or a bit of spending money in exchange for help. Takeo was impressed by Naruko's work ethic and cleverness, even offering her a future full-time position once she was older. But Naruko gently declined, saying she didn't want to risk causing trouble for them, especially when they had shown her so much kindness. Not long after, she distanced herself completely. The only updates they ever received about Naruko came from the same unkind gossip that had always surrounded her. To make matters more disheartening, their own daughter, Sakura, had begun to repeat those same stories and even contributed to the mistreatment Naruko faced at school. Worse still, Sakura had become overly fixated on a certain classmate, Sasuke Uchiha, who was often praised and favored by others in the village. Takeo could hardly hide his frustration when he thought about how the Uchiha clan had played a major role in ensuring Naruko was never adopted. He had little doubt that their influence still lingered. Sanae shared his thoughts. From what little they'd heard from Sakura, Naruko was often dismissed as annoying or lacking in talent. Sanae had gently scolded her daughter for judging someone without ever truly getting to know her. She had hoped Sakura would be kind to Naruko, perhaps even become her friend, but that hope had faded over time. Takeo had just finished locking up the store when he heard Sakura walk through the door. "Oh, hey there, sweetie." He called out warmly. "Hi, Dad," she replied with a sigh that didn't escape his attention. "So, how was your day? Didn't you get assigned to your ninja team today?" he asked with interest. "I can't believe I got put on the same team as Sasuke-kun. Ino was so jealous," she exclaimed with excitement. Her father, however, didn't seem very thrilled about it. He simply grunted in response, not particularly fond of the girl. It felt like every time he turned around, someone else was eager to praise her. The way she was constantly being doted on had started to wear on his nerves. One day, Naruko came into his store, hoping for a discount. Takeo didn't appreciate the expectation. He explained politely but firmly that she wasn't an exception and had to pay the same price as everyone else. Sasuke didn't take kindly to being told he couldn't have what he wanted and ended up filing complaints with the Civilian Council and Trade Commissions. As a result, Takeo was burdened with fines, legal trouble, and trading restrictions. It almost put the business he and his wife had worked so hard to build at risk. Fortunately, Tuchi Ichiraku and the Inoshikacho trio stepped in to support him. When they heard about how he stood his ground to be fair to Naruko, they chose to take their business to him. From that moment on, he strongly believed in the idea that kindness and fairness would always come back around. Honey? What about your other teammate? Her father asked. Sakura's cheerful demeanor quickly shifted to irritation. That girl Naruko just slows us down. She's always in Sasuke-kun's way. Honestly, I don't even think she should be a ninja. She would have continued, but to everyone's surprise, she was interrupted by her mother. Sanae looked heartbroken and frustrated. She had sat quietly, listening to her daughter repeat the harsh rumors spread about Naruko, and it pained her deeply. She knew Naruko personally and had always seen her as one of the kindest, most genuine people around. Sakura. Naruko has never been anything but kind and respectful to you and your classmates. And yet, you constantly put her down. I've heard about some of the things you've said and done, and I must say I am incredibly disappointed. You're repeating words you've heard from others, people who don't even know her. I've met her myself, and she is thoughtful, sincere, and brave. Sakura was taken aback. Once again, her mother had scolded her for how she treated Naruko. It took her a moment to find her voice and respond. But Sasuke-kun is the rookie of the year. He's from a well-known, respected family, talented, admired, and loved by everyone. While Naruko is, well, she's loud, clumsy, and no one really knows much about her family. Before she could continue, her father stepped in. Listen to yourself. What has the Uchiha boy done that makes him so special? He's had guidance, resources, and support every step of the way. Naruko has had to learn everything by herself, with no one cheering her on. Yet she keeps trying. That kind of strength deserves recognition too. After the family settled down and had dinner, Sakura went to take a bath and then headed to bed. As she drifted off to sleep, her inner voice, inner Sakura, spoke up. Now do you understand? Even mom and dad see it. They know her better than you do, and you see her every day. Inner Sakura sounded serious. Sakura groaned, still upset from the scolding. It's her fault. If she didn't annoy everyone so much, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble. Ugh. You're missing the point entirely. It's embarrassing to be part of you right now. Inner Sakura sighed in frustration. Naruko, Sakura murmured in her sleep as her parents listened quietly from the hallway. I can't believe the way this village's bitterness is affecting our little girl, Sanae whispered, hugging herself tightly. Her husband placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. I'm not sure what we can do. All we can hope is that she'll grow out of this. But if it keeps going, we'll need to figure something out. Ichigo gently carried Naruko into his apartment, carefully laid her on his bed, and then quietly left. He couldn't believe how poorly she had been treated by those around her. The prejudice and disdain that lived in the hearts of some adults had clearly been passed down to their children. It was a cycle of unkindness he recognized all too well, something both he and Sheena had faced in their pasts. And he didn't like it. Not one bit. His thoughts drifted back to an hour earlier, when he had met with Naruko's Jounin instructor, Kakashi Hatake. While Kakashi had a reputation as a talented shinobi, what Ichigo had seen in the mission records from his time overseeing Naruko's protection as an Anbu told a different story, and it wasn't a flattering one. Flashback, 1 hour earlier, Hokage's office. Ichigo and Lord 3rd, Sarutobi, had just finished reviewing a set of mission reports. These reports involved an Anbu team assigned to quietly watch over and protect Naruko. But the mission outcomes were troubling. The reports hinted at misconduct, suggesting Naruko had been deliberately led into dangerous situations, while her supposed protectors remained passive. Inoki had also been called in to evaluate Naruko's emotional state. After briefly reviewing her memories, he confirmed she was stable, but he emerged deeply unsettled. When Ichigo inquired about it, Inoki reluctantly explained that his own daughter had once again behaved harshly toward Naruko. As they continued discussing the situation, specifically the events following Ichigo's decision to temporarily incapacitate Naruko to prevent further harm. Kakashi entered the office. "What happened to Naruko?" Kakashi asked, his tone marked by irritation. The expressions of the other three men instantly shifted, growing serious. "She was attacked by her peers," Ichigo replied, his voice calm but firm. This triggered the Nine Tails' energy to flare up. Ichigo turned to face Kakashi fully, his gaze sharp and analytical. "What's that got to do with me?" Kakashi asked, his irritation deepening. "I'm getting there," Ichigo said, pacing slowly. "Your track record is remarkable. Jinan at 6, Chonin at 10, Jounin at 12, and Anbu captain at 14. Impressive. I still don't see the connection to Naruko's situation." Ichigo held up a folder. "Contained in these documents are mission logs from your time in Anbu, specifically from a mission where your squad was assigned to protect Naruko. A shinobi of your caliber should have been more than capable of preventing, or at the very least reducing, the number of incidents she endured at the hands of hostile civilians and unsanctioned attacks by lower-ranked ninja. Don't you think?" Kakashi's visible eye widened slightly, taken aback. It felt like a formal inquiry. This unfamiliar Jounin was thoroughly examining his record, especially the missions tied to Naruko's safety. How? Who exactly are you?" Kakashi stammered, before Ichigo cut him off with a calm but firm hand gesture. "Who I am isn't important. What matters is what's in these records. Hokage-sama graciously gave me access to them, and what I found was very concerning." He looked at Kakashi with quiet intensity. "From the looks of it, your squad didn't just fail to protect Naruko. You often stood by as she was put in harm's way. The only intervention came when things got too serious, just enough to avoid disciplinary action. Where were you when she needed you?" Kakashi lowered his gaze. "I was at the memorial stone," he admitted quietly, now fully aware of the consequences of his negligence. Ichigo softened slightly. "Your teammates? Rin and Obito, correct?" Kakashi gave a slight nod. "Yes." Ichigo sighed, the edge in his voice fading. "I know what it's like to carry loss with you, Kakashi. But allowing it to interfere with your responsibilities, especially to someone innocent, is unacceptable. Naruko trusted the village to protect her. The Hokage and the Fourth trusted you. And that trust was broken." Kakashi's frustration surged. "What could you possibly know about pain?" He muttered, his voice low. "You're just an outsider, someone the Hokage took in. You have no idea what I've been through." That was the breaking point for Sarutobi. "That is enough, Hatake," the elderly Hokage said, his voice stern with authority. "This young man has experienced more loss than most could ever understand. His world was taken from him, his loved ones, his peace. And still, he stands here out of concern for Naruko. Something very few people have shown. That alone deserves your respect." Kakashi had not seen the Hokage this stern since the night the Nine Tails was sealed, when the council debated Naruko's fate. Realizing it was best not to push further, he bowed his head slightly. "Forgive me, Hokage-sama. My comments were out of line. Good day." With that, he turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused briefly. "Tell Naruko to meet me at training ground 7 at 0600 tomorrow." As the door shut behind him, the room fell silent. All three remaining men let out a collective breath. Ichigo shook his head. "This isn't going to be easy, is it?" Inoki nodded thoughtfully in agreement. "I understand, but she's certainly been through more than most and has managed to handle it with surprising strength. Take you and Naruko, for example. However, she's still been missing some of her counseling appointments." Sarutobi cleared his throat gently to draw their attention. "I believe we should check on Naruko and the current condition of the seal." "Ichigo," he said, turning toward the younger blonde. "Yes, sir," Ichigo responded with composed professionalism. "I'd like you to evaluate the seal along with Inoki. In short, You'll be accompanying him as a safety measure regarding the QB. Ichigo nodded, his thoughts briefly lighting up with anticipation. I'll get to see Saki again. He thought cheerfully as Inoiki began preparing his mind-based technique. After a few moments, they were ready. With a shared nod, the two entered the mental space of the seal. They arrived in front of the enormous gate that housed the powerful spirit. Just beyond the bars, they saw Naruko resting on what looked like a large, soft red cushion. As they approached, a wave of chakra pushed them back, making them pause. A deep growl resonated from within the barrier, and both men looked up to see the awe-inspiring figure of the Kyubi no Kitsune, a magnificent fox spirit, watching them closely. Ichigo, unfazed, signaled to Inoiki to remain calm as he stepped forward with confidence. Saki. It's me, Ichigo, he said softly. The growling subsided almost immediately as the Kyubi's form began to glow gently, transforming into a graceful, crimson-haired woman with 9 flowing tails and fox-like ears. Her expression was warm but tinged with worry. Ichigo-kun. I'm glad, she said with a quiet sigh of relief. I truly don't know what might have happened if you hadn't stepped in. That much chakra flooding through her body all at once could have caused serious harm. I'm just thankful we reached her in time, Ichigo replied. I'll keep working with her on understanding and managing those emotions. Inoiki added thoughtfully, if you'd like, I can take over her counseling sessions. As you know, I'm also trained in therapy and may be able to support her more consistently with this kind of emotional guidance. Ichigo and Saki considered the suggestion and eventually nodded in agreement. That sounds like a good idea, Ichigo said, as they began discussing the practical details. Once finished, they exited the seal. Back in the real world, the blonde pair shared their decision with Sarutobi and arranged for Naruko's first session to take place the following week. Afterward, Ichigo gently picked up Naruko and brought her back to her apartment. Flashback end. Ichigo looked down at his last living relative with a soft sigh. This village. It's got a lot to figure out, doesn't it, kiddo? He murmured as he stood up. He left a neatly written note for Naruko, explaining the next day's plans, her upcoming counseling session, and a reminder that if she had any questions, she was always welcome to visit and ask. April 18th, Naruko's apartment, 5:15 hours. Naruko slowly sat up, placing her hand over her stomach with a wince. It felt like she had been hit with a powerful surge of energy. She glanced around, eyes landing on the note left behind. Reading through it, she found a clear explanation of what she needed to do and what her new teacher had planned for her. She had hoped to ask Ichigo more about it in person, but he was already gone. A second note on the door mentioned he was out on a patrol mission and would return later. With a quiet sigh, Naruko freshened up, got dressed, and made her way to the designated training ground to meet her team. Little did she know, another unexpected day of surprises awaited her. Training ground number 72055 hours. Naruko arrived at the training ground just a few minutes before the scheduled time. As she looked around, she noticed 2 other individuals already present. Could they be my new teammates? She wondered excitedly, quickly making her way toward them. However, her enthusiasm quickly faded the moment she recognized who they were. The feeling seemed to be mutual. Sakura and Sasuke exchanged glances, visibly unimpressed by Naruko's arrival. Sasuke, confident in his own skills, doubted Naruko's abilities and viewed her as someone who might slow them down. Sakura, not wanting to stand out, quietly mirrored Sasuke's attitude. Humph. Those two really seemed to get along, he thought with a trace of annoyance, settling down and beginning a meditation exercise Ichigo had taught her to help sharpen focus. Naruko worked to ignore the lingering glances the others sent in her direction. They waited for nearly 3 hours before a puff of smoke announced the dramatic arrival of their sensei. You're late. Sakura exclaimed, clearly exasperated. Kakashi, to his credit, at least looked slightly embarrassed. Sorry about that. I got lost on the path of life, he said with a sheepish smile. What a strange excuse, Naruko thought, gradually bringing herself out of her meditative state. Sitting calmly in a lotus position, she studied their sensei as he scanned the group of genin before him. "You must be Naruko Uzumaki, the final member of the team," Kakashi said aloud. "We already introduced ourselves yesterday while you were meeting with the Hokage, but if you'd like, you can share yours now." Naruko glanced at the others, who didn't seem particularly interested, but she gave a small sigh and introduced herself regardless. "I'm Naruko Uzumaki. I enjoy ramen, training, and spending time with my new neighbor, who's been really kind and teaches me all kinds of helpful things. I dislike narrow-mindedness, arrogance, and when people judge others unfairly. My dream is to become the strongest shinobi I can be, to prove my worth, and make the people I care about proud." Sasuke and Sakura barely reacted, and Kakashi was already absorbed in the small orange book he always seemed to carry. Naruko blinked in disbelief. "Hello?" she called out loudly. Kakashi looked up from his book. "Oh, you're finished? Great. Now we can begin the test," he said, pulling out two small bells. He explained that their task was to retrieve the bells from him before noon. The person who didn't get a bell would be tied to the training post and miss out on lunch. Naruko nearly jumped into action immediately, but paused, remembering Ichigo's advice, always study your opponent before you strike. As Kakashi gave the signal to start, Sasuke and Sakura quickly concealed themselves, but Naruko stayed where she was, carefully observing the copy ninja. "You know, Naruko," Kakashi said, "most people would hide if they planned to observe quietly." "Yeah, well, I'm not most people," she replied casually. "Didn't you listen to my introduction?" "So? Don't you want the bells?" he teased. "Of course I do," she admitted with a smirk, "but I'm not going to rush in recklessly." "You'd better come up with a strategy, then." Naruko smiled slyly. "Who says I haven't already?" Kakashi raised an eyebrow, not entirely amused by her confidence. Taking the initiative, he launched a swift attack, only for Naruko to vanish in a puff of smoke. "A shadow clone? Already?" Kakashi thought in surprise. Almost instantly, multiple clones burst from beneath the ground like springing flowers, grabbing onto the jounin in an attempt to slow him down. The real Naruko moved in stealthily, aiming to snag a bell while he was distracted. She mentally thanked Ichigo for helping her learn patience and strategy. However, Kakashi wasn't a high-ranking ninja for nothing. He quickly dissolved into the ground using a substitution technique and reappeared a safe distance away. One by one, he skillfully eliminated the clones, his experience evident with every move. Despite Naruko's progress over the past week, her taijutsu still had a long way to go compared to his. After a brief exchange, Kakashi managed to land a clean blow that knocked Naruko off her feet. With Naruko temporarily out of the way, Kakashi turned his attention to the remaining genin. Sasuke had been observing the encounter with thinly veiled frustration. Those clones weren't illusions. They were solid, he thought, his eyes narrowing. How did someone like her get access to that kind of technique before I did? Meanwhile, Naruko stirred on the ground, rubbing her head and muttering. "Ow. That really wasn't pleasant." "Of course that must have been difficult, he is a jounin," Saki said thoughtfully. "Naruko, I believe the key to this test is teamwork. I know it might not be your favorite approach, but at least try to give it a chance." Naruko considered Saki's words for a moment, then gave a small nod. "All right, I'll give it a shot. But just so you know, they're more likely to come after me than to actually cooperate," she replied, refocusing her attention on the task at hand. In the distance, she suddenly heard a scream that she instantly recognized as Sakura's. Without hesitation, she made her way in that direction. When she reached her, Naruko quickly created a few shadow clones to scout the area and keep Kakashi occupied if necessary. She noticed a faint trace of chakra lingering in the air, clear evidence that a genjutsu had just been used. Channeling her own chakra, she formed a ram seal and firmly called out, "Kai." The illusion broke, and Sakura began to stir. "Sasuke?" she mumbled sleepily, before her vision cleared and she realized it was the blonde-haired girl standing before her. "Naruko, come on!" Sakura shouted as she launched a punch, only for Naruko to calmly deflect it and gently redirect her off balance. "So, this is how you thank me for helping you break free from that genjutsu? I was going to ask you and Sasuke if you'd like to team up to take on Kakashi-sensei and try to get the bells together," Naruko said, brushing herself off. "Humph. As if we'd lower ourselves to teaming up with someone like you," Sakura replied with a dismissive tone. "The purpose of this test is teamwork. That should be clear by now. Kakashi-sensei is trying to turn us against each other so we won't succeed," Naruko explained calmly, hoping Sakura would listen. "Forget it, Naruko. Sasuke-kun and I are going to pass without your help," Sakura snapped before running off in search of Sasuke. Naruko sighed quietly. "They just don't understand," she murmured to herself as she stood up and headed off to find Sasuke. Fortunately, one of Naruko's shadow clones had spotted Sasuke about 300 yards away. Kakashi-sensei was nowhere nearby. Naruko quickly made her way there, helped Sasuke out of the ground, and called Sakura over again to regroup. She shared her idea about working together, only for Sasuke to give her a cold look. "Why would I team up with you two?" he said, glancing mainly at Sakura. Naruko shook her head slowly. "At least I gave it a try," she said to herself as she walked calmly toward a clearing, hoping to lure Kakashi out. Back at the Hokage's office, Lord Third was observing everything through his crystal ball, not entirely pleased. Naruko, who everyone underestimated, figured out the true meaning of the test and tried to bring the team together. But Sasuke's pride and Sakura's blind admiration stopped them from seeing the bigger picture. "This is starting to remind me of the Sannin. And not in the best way," he thought, reminiscing with a hint of concern. Elsewhere near the training field, another Jounin watched with a serious expression. "They haven't learned the lesson yet," he thought, keeping his focus on the rest of the test. Once the time was up, the Jounin gathered in front of Kakashi. He scolded Naruko for trying to face him alone but said nothing to Sasuke. He blamed her for not cooperating, though she had made the effort to do just that. Naruko was then tied to a post and made to watch while the others ate, with Kakashi warning that anyone who shared food with her would automatically fail. Sakura sat in front of Naruko, eating her lunch hesitantly. When she heard Naruko's stomach rumble, she saw Naruko wince slightly. Inner Sakura spoke up in her mind. "That didn't sound good. Has she even eaten today?" "Whatever. I'm not going to fail because she didn't take care of herself," the surface-level Sakura replied dismissively. Inner Sakura grew frustrated but then had an idea. "Hey! Come here for a second," she said, briefly taking control. Sakura stood, looked around, and gently offered Naruko a piece of shrimp. Naruko blinked in surprise, confused by the sudden change. Sasuke noticed and snapped, "Don't give her food. I'm not going to fail because of that. We need her at full strength if we want any chance of doing this as a team," Sakura replied. Sasuke hesitated, then gave in. "Fine. Here," he said, holding out some of his food as well. Just then, Kakashi appeared. "Congratulations. You all pass," he said with a smile, before turning to Sasuke. "And Sasuke, good thinking." Both Inner Sakura and Ichigo couldn't help but think the same thing. Wait. He's taking credit for what Naruko did? Naruko was a bit puzzled by Sakura's behavior, one moment keeping her at arm's length, the next showing kindness. Saki, watching from a distance, had her own thoughts. That girl. She definitely has more than one side to her. One that actually respects Naruko and sees through the surface of things. Kakashi had just finished his briefing, letting the team know when and where to meet next, officially naming them Team 7. With a casual farewell, he disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving Naruko still playfully tied to the post. Sasuke stood up and approached Sakura, his frustration clearly visible. Inner Sakura momentarily lost control, and her admiration for Sasuke took over. You weren't thinking clearly. That could have ruined everything I've been working toward, Sasuke said with a sharp tone, raising his hand in frustration. Before anything else could happen, a stream of water suddenly shot from the nearby creek and hit Sasuke, stopping him in his tracks. Both teammates turned to find the source of the jutsu. Standing by the stream was the same Jounin from the day before, his gloved hand extended and eyes fixed calmly but firmly on Sasuke. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked firmly as he approached the stump where Naruko was tied. With a simple snap of his fingers, the rope seemed to slice apart as if by an invisible force, falling away and freeing the young blonde girl. The sudden display drew everyone's attention. He performed a jutsu without any hand signs. Sasuke thought, astonished. "Hey, you, teach me how to do that." "Teach you what?" the tall blonde man responded calmly. "That jutsu. You didn't use hand signs or even pause to concentrate." "I need that ability," Sasuke insisted. "I'm afraid that's not something I can teach. Even if I could, I wouldn't share it with someone who turns against their teammates so easily," he answered, his tone steady but firm. Sasuke's pride was clearly wounded. "I said teach me," he shouted, lunging toward the Jounin. Before he could connect, the man effortlessly caught him by the collar and lifted him off the ground. "That wasn't a wise choice," he said quietly. Sakura snapped out of her daze, rushing forward. "Please, don't hurt Sasuke-kun. He didn't mean it." Ichigo raised an eyebrow. Despite the situation, she was still defending him. He let Sasuke go, and the boy stumbled back but wasn't done yet. Quickly forming hand signs, Sasuke shouted, "Katen, Kukakyu no Jutsu," and launched a massive fireball directly toward the man. Seeing Naruko and Sakura still behind him, Ichigo made a split-second decision. "Not good," he muttered, then raised his hand, summoning a protective shield of water that enveloped them, shielding them from the incoming heat. Once the flames faded, he vanished and reappeared behind Sasuke, a short blade gently pressed against the boy's neck, not harming him, but sending a clear message. "You could have seriously injured your teammates," he said in a calm, but pointed tone. Sakura was stunned. No hand signs. Just pure control. Who is this guy? Naruko, on the other hand, wasn't surprised. She had seen Ichigo in action before, and it still impressed her. "Thanks for the help, Ichigo-san." Ichigo gave her a nod before gently rendering Sasuke unconscious and lifting him by the back of his shirt. "You two, head home. I'll be taking him to your sensei for a conversation." His voice left no room for argument. The girls nodded and watched as he disappeared in a swirl of water, taking their teammate with him. Naruko turned and began walking home, only to be stopped by Sakura's question. "Naruko, do you know him?" Naruko paused, thinking it over. "Yeah. He's my next-door neighbor. Moved in about a week ago. He's actually pretty cool. He helps me with training, things like meditation, some basic taijutsu, and chakra control. After our sessions, he always treats me to ramen at Ichiraku's. He's kind, and he'd never hurt anyone without a really good reason," she said, clearly proud. As she walked away, Sakura stood quietly, reflecting on what had happened. Sasuke's behavior gave her a lot to think about. This wasn't the first time he had acted without considering those around him. She sighed, trying to push the uneasy thoughts aside as she slowly made her way home. Dear YouTube family, that's all for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Thanks for watching. Anime Dreams.